energy lingers until, even though you're in spirit, but you're going to be hanging around in there for a while until you understand and see yourself who you were when you were here and work through that to make yourself a better person. Other colors that people might see, red or orange orbs, mean the spirit is a protector of that space, and they mean no harm. They can also be welcoming or inviting, so it's a bit more pleasant. Green orbs are associated with pure love, a human spirit, or Mother Earth. Green orbs are often seen in dense forests, jungles, and can be sighted during tribal rituals. Blue orbs indicate strong psychic energy and truth. Blue orbs are often comforting and love to hang out with you during meditation or loving moments. Yeah, and the gray or smoky orbs, which is very similar to the black or brown, can indicate a depressed or confused soul or a spirit unaware that it is passed over or crossed over.
Going back to the ghost hunting, the TV shows.
Yes.
I was obviously filmed back in the UK.
Yes, for those of you who don't know, yes, she was a big megastar back in the day in the 90s on Ghost Hunters. Was it called Ghost Hunters?
Yeah, it was Ghost Hunters, and really was a selection of different places that people had said they felt or had seen a ghostly presence at some point, and we were asked to go in and investigate, basically. I remember when they did the filming, I refused to go back to the actual place where I had the encounter with the ghost.
Okay.
Because I didn't feel it was very respectful. And during the filming, I didn't see it because I was looking at the camera, but the camera crew did say that they saw quite a number of orbs.
Did they say what colour they were?
Yeah, they were white, and I think some were blue, but mostly white. But there was a very emotional presence, so a lot of the crew started to cry towards the end of it. Yeah. I think because there was obviously another medium that had been asked to come down from London. Yeah. He'd actually gone to the building because he'd never been there before, and had been asked to basically see if he could pick up the same energy. Yeah. So you didn't see the orbs on the camera there, but we did in effect did quite a few. I was asked to go to other places and do the same thing, but I didn't want to be recorded. But there were orbs. But I think generally when they do arrive, it is a nice thing, And I know that from past experience where people have been seriously ill, and they, without being rude, their days are numbered on the planet. Yep. They get to see what they think are like little flickers of light, and they're like the little fairies that are coming to to tell you that everything's all right. We're all getting ready for you, and sometimes the orbs do come. Yeah. But they're generally to sort of try and help that person to be a bit more relaxed about passing over, if there's ever such a thing, because I don't think there's ever a time when you can say anybody is looking forward to it unless they're in so much pain, and they're elderly, because some people do. They say, I'm tired, I want to go now, I've had enough. Yeah. But the orbs would arrive then. Yeah. So very interesting, isn't it?
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that have had experiences where someone who they are close to, as you say, someone who's elderly especially. I know my own father-in-law years ago when he was getting ready to cross over his wife, who was my mother-in-law. They were very, very close, been married for many, many years. And he was devastated when she died actually very suddenly. It was very sad. So he was kind of left on his own, and he really just didn't, you could tell he just didn't want to be here anymore. He withered very quickly. And this is not an unusual story where couples have been together for 50, 60 years. When one suddenly goes, the other one goes very quickly.
Yeah, they do.
After them. And it's just because they've coexisted for such a long time that it's like losing your right arm. All of a sudden you can't function the way that you used to anymore, because that the yin is missing its yang sort of thing.
Yeah, very much so.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking about that whole process, really. And obviously, when you do get to the other side, it's not all over Red Rover. There's a lot of processing going on where, you go to a place where you reevaluate and reflect, however long that takes. There's no sort of time element on the other side, as we call it.
Yeah.
But that leads us nicely into the reincarnation. When people are ready to come back, they relive their lives with the goals that they didn't meet in the previous life.
Yeah.
And obviously, many people, I'm sure, have got stories to tell, and there is a specific story that Claudia's just about to explain to us, which is quite extraordinary. But if you do have any stories about orbs or some link to reincarnation, or
spiritual encounters,
have got memories of their past lives, then it would be great if you could email us, or if you've got questions about that, then we can be contacted on thenuminous@hotmail.com.
Yes. Yeah, any sort of stories. I mean, everybody's got stories. I mean, this you'll be sitting around with a group of friends, and when this subject gets brought up, it is quite intriguing to most people because everyone's got a tale to tell.
Yes, they have.
And it's very interesting. And we did touch on this subject a few weeks ago when we were talking about what is heaven like. Obviously reincarnation is part of that. So, supposedly from the books we've read and the information that we've learned to date is, when we do cross over, we do, as you say, go through a bit of a deprocessing or a debrief, if you like, with our spirit guides and say, well, how was that life, and what did you get right, what did you get wrong, what do you want to fix, and when do you want to go back?
Your Q&A.
That's it. So it's all about, because life in spirit is forever. We go on and on and on. Life in the physical is limited. So this is where a lot of people, and a lot of religions around the world do accept reincarnation. The religions that don't necessarily acknowledge it are very limited. But as far as reincarnation goes, everyone at some stage or another has had a feeling in their life where they've had an affinity to a certain place or certain people. They've had experiences where they feel drawn to certain situations and they want to stay away from others and so forth. My own experience, I mean, I've had several. I've had inklings, dreams, sensations, feelings, whatever, in relation to a life in Scotland, a life in Italy, a life possibly in Atlantis, in Egypt. I have at different times in my life had these feelings where these are places where I've lived at some stage. And I do know that the people that are around me, and yourself included, Ronnie, I know I have interacted with you many, many times before because there's just that strong connection.
Must have done something wrong with my previous life.
Yeah, maybe you did. I don't know.
What was the story about your father? Remember the story about him not actually having any connection to a particular part of the world, which I won't spoil.
My father was very skeptical about a lot of stuff. He was very, unless I could show him something tangible, he struggled with it. Whereas I've always been very, very open-minded with all this sort of thing because of my experiences, because of my empathy, because of my intuition. I've just always known that there's something more. So anyway, I did have this conversation with my father once years ago in relation to reincarnation. He said, well, I think we're just here for the one time and that's it. And if you get it right, you get it right. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. And I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense, Dad. What's the point of it all then? And then he did say that, well, look, if I did have another life, I believe I would have lived in Scotland. And I said, why is that? Now, here's my father, who's as German as sausages and sauerkraut. And
don't even want that image in my head.
And polka dancing. But whenever he would hear Scottish music, whenever he would hear bagpipes, whenever he would hear Mullen Kintar, he would have this emotional response that was overwhelming to the point where it would bring tears to his eyes. It was, you could just see there was something there. And when he said that, I thought he's actually, somewhere in his unconscious mind, he's actually acknowledging not only what I was saying, but he was saying, well, you know what? Maybe my past life, my most recent past life, this is something that someone who I was. I was a Scottish lord, because I've also had a feeling, as I said before, one of my past lives I believe was in Scotland, because I have a bit of a lure to go back there. So I could have been connected. Maybe in that life he was my brother, not my father. You know what I mean? And those connections are there as well. So this leads us down to, anyone who, everybody knows what reincarnation is. But some people may not know what to look for, or what actually makes a point of in your life of like ticking a box in relation to, have I lived a life before?
Whether you've got a memory of your
or a
previous
memory.
life.
That's right. So some of the things to look for, I think the first is deja vu.
I love this one.
Just that feeling of, which I have deja vu a lot. I just have and it really it's like a split second of something happening in your life. You're driving down a road, and all of a sudden you think, "Wow, I've been down this road before. Why does this feel familiar?" A conversation, eating something, drinking something, just a series of events that literally are a split second, but there's that instantaneous familiarity, and that's just telling you that you're on the right path.
Yeah, I get deja vu when I get drunk.
Yeah, you do. I've noticed that a lot.
And there's actually a psychological, I can't remember what the actual name is, but it's a psychological condition that if you do things when you're drunk and then you go back to being drunk, you actually remember what you did when you were drunk. Which I think's funny. But yeah, I think we've all had deja vu. I went to Italy and I felt like I'd been there before. I was sober at that time.
Was there wine
I was
involved?
there teaching, yeah. There was some wine involved, but I was mostly sober, I would like to say, yeah, especially in the classroom. That was really good of me, quite sensitive.
Yeah, no, it's a big part of it, and everybody knows what deja vu is. So deja vu is the first box that we tick in relation to potential past life, or just being on a similar journey and we're repeating something. The next is a very strong intuition or a sense of familiarity with certain individuals, places, and events. So again, that kind of pulls the deja vu back into it, but it's also when you meet someone for the first time, or you think you're meeting them for the first time, and you suddenly have that feeling like, wow, I know this person, there's something really familiar about them, or I feel like I've just known them a long time. I feel instantly comfortable with them. Or you can have the opposite effect and think you repel from them. Again, there's a clue that you may have interacted with this person, not in this lifetime, but in a past lifetime, and they've crossed your path again.
Do you know what? It's as you were saying that, it brings back a few memories when I first arrived in Australia, and I'm not sure whether it's because you're always looking for somebody that you might know, that you're familiar with, because you don't. You're in a different country, and you've really left every sort of familiarity behind. And somehow or other, I'd look at faces and think, oh, where do I know that person from? Well, I'd never met them. Yeah. I wonder whether that had anything to do with it, or I was just hopeful, just hoping somebody would recognise me. Yeah.
Well, look, I'll just digress for a moment. Like, one of the things that's coming up in these, suggestions of, how to acknowledge that you've had past lives is recurring dreams. One of the more recent experiences that I actually did have was a day when I was at the hairdresser's not long ago, and just sitting in the chair, and she was just sort of finishing up doing my hair. She was blow drying, and it was just feeling extremely relaxed, sitting in the chair, closed my eyes, and the rhythm of the blow dryer just sort of waving back and forth across my ear started to sound. The sound morphed into the sound of train tracks, like the train going over tracks. So you got to do that sound. And then once my unconscious mind actually locked into that sound, it actually took me to another place. And I found myself sitting on a train, but not in modern day. This was an old steam train. And judging from the clothing that people were wearing around me, I felt it was sort of late 1800s. I myself was wearing a bonnet and had gloves, and I was wearing a long dress, and I could just tell from the people around me, the conversation, it was sort of giving me clues as to the era. And also with the conversation and what people were saying, I knew I was in Canada. And I knew that I was on a maiden trip of this particular steam train. It was going from Montreal to British Columbia. So when I sort of came out of this trance,